Josh Jacobs and Alvin Kamara's fantasy outlook is rapidly rising as we enter week 1 of the 2024 season. We hit on all the latest news around the NFL and its impact on fantasy on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, we went through some different draft strategies throughout this week, but now we're getting a lot of news coming throughout the NFL, right, as we're entering week 1. And a lot of players, their fantasy outlook is kind of looking different as we're entering week 1, starting with Josh Jacobs. This is the biggest news we got this week, I think, that impacts the fantasy world, is that A.J. Dillon is being placed on season-ending IR. And no, we didn't care about A.J. Dillon in fantasy, but that is a huge tick up for Josh Jacobs, who we were worried, Dillon's going to get his carries like he always does. Maybe he'll steal some goal line work, but now Josh Jacobs would be an absolute workhorse this season.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned if he can hold up, because this has been an issue with Josh Jacobs. Like, he's had that big workload a couple of years ago, and it really caused him to break down the following year, right? Wasn't nearly as effective, and he missed the last month of the season in 2023. Now, that's my biggest concern with Josh Jacobs. It's not his usage, right? He can catch passes. He's a pretty good power runner. They can use him at the goal line and all that good stuff. Can he stay on the field? And now it's a little cloudier, right? We don't have A.J. Dillon behind, but it might actually make it clear Marshawn Lloyd, who's been hurt as well in training camp and the preseason. But we'll see how that develops. I think you have to look at him now as an RB1. And he's not up there with Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs in the second tier, or tier 1 going into tier 2, but I think you have to start moving him up, maybe into the top 10, right? He's at RB12 now, but he catches passes. He's going to be a big part of what they do. They did give him a pretty good contract. So I just don't love Jacobs, the player, but the situation is good. And he's produced before, right? I mean, he can. If he gets the volume, we've seen it. He can lead the league in rushing and in scrimmage yards. So that's the kind of ceiling he has. So I'm fine with it. Bump up Josh Jacobs more into like very solid kind of RB1 territory. I think you go 8 to 10 with him at this point.
Yeah, right now 8 to 10 is Travis Etienne, Derrick Henry, and Isaiah Pacheco and ADP. I am fine with Josh Jacobs right in that tier. I definitely would rather him than Pacheco. We'll talk about his news that might impact him in the next segment, but I'd rather Jacobs over Pacheco. Etienne and him are very close, but I kind of trust the Packers offense just a little bit more than the Jaguars, so I actually might lean with Jacobs there. Now, Alvin Kamara is also getting a bump up. It's not anything I guess we didn't expect, but Kendre Miller is like just definitely not going to be a part of this offense, right? He was placed on IR to start the season. Now he's only out the first 4 weeks, but he's just never been able to be on the field. Dennis Allen, the head coach of the Saints, seems to absolutely hate Kendre Miller. Like, anytime he has a chance to bring this dude down at a press conference, he will do it. So, I mean, Alvin Kamara is 29 years old, sure, but this backfield still his. We were worried that maybe they would split it up. No, that's not going to happen. Alvin Kamara is so safe with this workload. We know he's going to get so many targets, and he finished as a running back 5 in fantasy points per game last year. Like, Kamara should be going higher than he is. I don't know how efficient he will be, but he could have like a Rachaad White season where he stinks with efficiency, but still ends up being really good for fantasy.
Yeah, he's RB17 on the board. That's probably a little too low for his usage, and it's going to be different usage, right? I mean, his biggest threat remains in the red zone. That's Taysom Hill, right? To take away some of the key runs inside the 5 when they bring in that wrinkle here, but it's not going to be Jamal Williams. He's not going to suddenly reproduce the double-digit touchdown score he was in Detroit a couple years ago. That's never going to happen. So Alvin Kamara is going to be busy. I think this new offense with Clint Kubiak also fits his running style pretty well here. So, again, it says a lot that the Saints not only have dumped on Miller, but they kept Kamara. There were so many opportunities where you can cut him, move on, but they realized they need him in this new offense.
Yeah, and you said it, Taysom Hill, right? That stock up is for him as well. If you don't have the backup running back and Kendry Miller, I mean, I know Jamal Williams is there, but it's just Jamal Williams. Like Taysom Hill, I think might be the goal line back in this offense. But with Kamara, it's not like he was a big touchdown scorer last year, right? And he still finished as the running back 5 in points per game. He's gonna get the targets. Now, 2 guys whose stock is looking down as we enter. It's 2 guys still holding out, Jamar Chase and Brandon Ayuk. Let's start first with Jamar Chase because he was practicing and then not practicing, and then he came back to practice for like a day, and now he's not practicing again. Does this scare us away from drafting him in the first round? Because at this point, we don't know if he's going to play in week 1 or not.
Yeah, it's a weird situation, right? I don't understand kind of these wide receiver contracts. I mean, I kind of could have told you that was CeeDee Lamb's value when Justin Jefferson signed. I pretty much know what Jamar Chase's value is going to be. It's going to be a little bit higher than Justin Jefferson, right? Overall, the guaranteed money and the deal. And look, I get what he's doing, but he also has to keep in mind, maybe he should look to T. Higgins and say, this is the problem here, because they franchise tagged him and he's playing on that tag, and it's very expensive to kind of work it out now. It actually could help them with Higgins going forward, but the Bengals have already said they're not looking at this until next year. And look, the timeline says it should be next year because you have 2020 was the draft of Jefferson and Lamb. The timeline says Chase will get paid next year. Now he's trying to jump the gun and get extended because all these other wide receivers got extended. Now he's going as the wide receiver 3, number 5 overall. So very lofty expectations. I mean, it's right there with Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, and then at running back before him, Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, and Bijan Robinson, kind of right where Jamar Chase is at this point. Now, I think I would easily go to Bijan Robinson over Jamar Chase. I think I would look at potentially Jonathan Taylor, right? I mean, I like him quite a bit there. I don't know if you're getting a lot of value with Jamar Chase at that spot, or even Justin Jefferson. He's sitting right there, right? That you would look at wide receiver. Like, I like Chase a lot, but the Higgins presence and this going on, like, again, there's going to be some ways that his production gets cut into.
Yeah, I think the answer is just Amon-Ra St. Brown right there. If you're going wide receiver, St. Brown just seems so much safer than going with Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase this year. And I'm with you, Bijan Robinson over Chase as well. Now, with the Brandon Ayuk news, I think we're both kind of low on him this year because of how long he's been out. And like, we think Devo will be more involved. I will say my bigger worry with the 49ers right now is Trent Williams holding out. He's the left tackle. He's the best left tackle in the league. He has been for each of the last 4 years per PFF, highest graded left tackle in the league each of those years. But the two apparently are not close to a deal in Trent Williams and the 49ers. And I think that affects Brock Purdy and maybe even Christian McCaffrey, because the stats with and without Trent Williams on the field are drastic. Purdy had a 29-point higher passer rating with Trent Williams on the field last year compared to off. And also the run game, the 49ers averaged 2 more yards per carry with Williams on the field last year compared to off. And even if you do the last 3 seasons, they average 2 more yards per carry with Williams on the field than off. Like, it's just, he makes such a big difference for this team. I'm more worried about Trent Williams being out for Brock Purdy and CMC than I am about Brandon Ayuk being out.
Yeah, and Michelle, I'm going to add something to this. And Brock Purdy's dropped down to QB12. It doesn't seem like that's very drastic, but it's also coming at a time when Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams are moving up boards here pretty quickly. And to the point, I think in some places Williams has jumped Brock Purdy. And there's like Jared Goff and some people behind Purdy that are starting to make a move. So you look at this, I mean, the first 2 games are pretty brutal. If you look at the schedule, it's the Jets. I mean, that's a very tough defense to draw. I don't know if you can absolutely trust Purdy at all in that matchup, even if Williams played, right? It's a very tough matchup against maybe the best defense that isn't the 49ers in the league. So when you look at that, that's tough. And then we know what happened last year. I think Trent Williams missed the game in Minnesota. It was brutal for Brock Purdy. The Vikings have Brian Flores. They've got an adjusted pass rush now with Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard and some of these guys they have, right? These are not pretty matchups to start the season. So that's tough, right? If you take Brock Purdy, we love Brock Purdy, the player, but without Trent Williams, these matchups become more difficult. And it's hard. He's not, to me, a player that I'm just going to say start every week. It's just hard to do that, especially with those tough two matchups.
Yeah, what's nice is he's going late, so you don't have to start him every week.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where you put. I always am looking for guys to take with Jared Goff, right? Maybe it's Jared Goff
Yeah.
and Brock Purdy, because you know who Jared Goff gets week one. It's that Rams secondary at home. We know what he did to them in the playoffs. Like, yeah, let's go. Maybe you could do those too. But we're gonna get to more guys whose stock is down entering the season now. The Cowboys added Delvin Cook. We need to discuss that, because that
Yes.
Cowboys backfield all around is just stock down and gross. We'll get to that right after our quick break.
I'm pleased to say that we're introducing a new sponsor here on Locked on Fantasy Football. It's very exciting because it's 5-Hour Energy. And yeah, you got to be showing your energy over this. I mean, this is fantastic, right? This is a chance to get you going as well. Like, I sometimes need a bolt of energy in the middle of the day. That's always when I need it. When you're sitting there after lunch and you're still got some things on your to-do list for work, that's when you kind of need that little burst to get you going and finish your day strong. And then sometimes, look, I live on the East Coast. These games can run really late. And especially on Sunday nights, Monday nights, when we're watching football and watching our fantasy players in action, I need to think about a 5-hour energy as well. So it's all there for me to take advantage of and really help me get what I need to power through. And with zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's a perfect pick me up for getting stuff done whenever it is, any time of day. The 5-Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. Try them all. And on the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. It doesn't get any more convenient and better than that. So check it out here. All you have to do is go to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5hourenergy.com and get a 5-hour energy product today. You can use the promo code there, Locked On FB. That's Locked On FB to receive 20% off your order. So you can customize those flavors and get that order going, and then you'll get 20% off as well. This offer is only valid until September 30th. So act fast. Is on one order and cannot be used with any other promotion. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5, that's the number 5, 5hourenergy.com today to take advantage. All right, we have a lot of energy on this show that we're trying to get through here because, look, there's so much going on. There's so much going on so late in the preseason, right before the season. You got to pay attention to fantasy football. Another development is Dalvin Cook is back. I cannot believe this. He's not going to go away. Last year, he was causing problems behind Breece Hall and the Jets. Now he's here causing problems on the practice squad of the Cowboys behind Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle. Now, Michelle, what do you make of this? Right now, Zeke is RB38, Rico Dowdle's RB43. What do we do with the Cowboys backfield?
This is just stay away from backfield. It's disgusting.
God.
I mean, there's no reason that Dalvin Cook would be any better than Ezekiel Elliott, right? Like, I think they're pretty much both in the same spot in their careers. They were once very, very good. They're now just getting to that age where they've slowed down and they're not going to be as effective. Now, Dalvin Cook does say, last year he was injured and this year he feels the best he's felt in a long time, right? The things that these players always say. I mean, we are only 1 year removed from him having over 1,100 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns with the Vikings. But I don't think he's going to get a big workload in this backfield. And this makes me completely out on any hope for Rico Dowdle to do anything, right? Rico Dowdle has already been in the league. He's entering his 4th year. He's already 26 years old. He never has been utilized. Like, I don't think they're just going to start to push him in now over Dalvin Cook and Zeke. There's a reason they brought in Cook, and it's because they have zero hope that Rico can be anything. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and it could be just an ugly split usage backfield, and nobody really having any real defined roles. They'll put in random guys at times at the goal line. They can put anyone in the change of pace role. They can put anyone in the receiving role. It's going to be brutal. All I know is Dak Prescott is going to be probably throwing 70% of the time this season. And Mike McCarthy, that's going to be good for him, right? And I don't think the Cowboys' defense is going to be as good. So this is really good for Dak. Maybe that's what we have to take away. And I don't know. We're just going to hold out, and maybe they'll bring back DeMarco Murray. I don't know. That could definitely happen. But I'll tell you one back that's on the move again, Samaje Perine. He stays in the AFC West. He goes from the Broncos to the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs have kind of had a weird offseason. They said goodbye to Jerick McKinnon, but brought back Clyde Edwards-Helaire behind Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco's been going as RB10. This seems a little bit too rich now with the Jacobs news and Kamara news that we would want to take Pacheco like that. Because, again, this is a very fickle Andy Reid coaching staff when it comes to backfields.
Yeah, I mean, the one reason people were getting high on Pacheco is maybe he gets the receiving role, right? Because he doesn't get consistent workload on the ground because you just never know what the Chiefs' game plan is. Are they just going to lean on Mahomes the whole game? Or like he is going to get the vast majority of the carries on the ground. Like Perine's not going to take that. But Perine is a very good receiving back. He got 56 targets last year with the Broncos. 51 with the Bengals. Like, I think they brought him in because they're looking for a receiving back. And that's really that's the role I see him playing. Pacheco only had 49 targets last year as a full-time starter, full-time back out there. So I do think Perine's going to steal that receiving work that we are hoping was going to go to Pacheco.
Yeah, this is unfortunate. I like Isaiah Pacheco, but again, the Chiefs made me not comfortable in that role. Also, not to wear him down, right? He's such a powerful, violent runner with some explosiveness. So maybe they don't want to slow that down a little bit and just put him on the field too much. And maybe that's what they're realizing here with Perine becoming available for the Broncos. They jumped on him. Now, Sean McVay does some weird things. We talk about fickle coaches and their running backs here. But Kyren Williams is going to be used on punt returns. That's the news we're talking about. This is not good because that's a way for Kyren Williams to get hurt a little bit more. Right now, he's going a little bit ahead of Pacheco at RB9. I would expect that may not change too much, but does this make you a little bit worried about your guy? And by the way, Blake Corum, one of the better handcuffs, he's going as RB40.
Yeah, not in the slightest. And I wanted to put him here because his stock is going down in the fantasy community world. Like, if you're on Twitter, if you're in the fantasy Twitter, oh my goodness, you would have thought they cut Kyren Williams with this news. Guys, the Rams had 28 punt returns last year. 28. Most punt returns are either fair caught, kicked out of bounds, kicked out of the end zone. They had 28 punt returns last year. That's 1.6 returns per game. That's what we're talking about for Kyren Williams here. He was their punt returner in weeks 1 through 3 last year. He had one punt return in each of those games. Like, relax. That one punt return a game is not going to keep Kyren Williams from being a star running back in fantasy. I've brought this up many times. Yes, Williams will not get the workload he saw last year because it was an insane workload. He led the NFL in touches per game. He had 19 carries per game. That's what he averaged. The second most was Josh Jacobs at 17.9. Like, he averaged 2 more carries per game than Christian McCaffrey. Yes, Blake Corum will help him out. So he's not out there for every single snap, but he can get some work taken away and still be one of the top workhorses in the league. This whole punt return thing is silly. 1 touch per game difference. Like, that's it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, the only thing that's worrying about Kyren Williams is I think we've seen these later round draft picks that have a little smaller build, and he did miss games last year. So that's the one thing that worries me. But you have a direct solution, right? You get Kyren Williams, you had Blake Corum, you're set. You're set. He's the clear backup. So that's a great situation. Much, I think, developing like Braylon Allen as a rookie there behind Breece Hall. So that's good. You want to have some clear-cut dudes behind your high investment. So I think it just goes without saying, if you get Williams early, you got to get Corum too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I guess if he
Yeah.
gets hurt.
They're the
Yeah,
same type of runner. So I would think that, okay, if Williams gets hurt, they just plug and play Corum and go from
yeah,
there. But the one thing about the Rams backfield, they're not a committee backfield. What they are and how they trick you is like who's going to be the guy, the main guy. But they run that guy kind of ragged. But this, like you said, will help Kyron by having Corum because you'll take a few kind of key touches off his plate. And the Rams are smart. They're going to realize, okay, so two more potential opportunities in the punt return game. We'll take away 2 carries and we'll try to even it out here.
yeah. Now we did get news about the last 3 starting quarterback jobs, right? So now we know all the starters that are starting in week 1, unless there were to be an injury happen before then. But over the last week, the Steelers announced that Russell Wilson will be starting. The Broncos announced Bo Nix will be starting, and then just a little bit ago, we got news that Jacoby Brissett will be the starter for the Patriots over Drake May. We're going to talk about those 3 guys and how they impact their team's fantasy outlook this year. Now that we know that they're the official starters. We'll get to that right after this quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I've used this app many times, and I always utilize them because of how easy the app is to use, how I get to see my seats before I even buy them. Like, you can get images of your seat. You get to see exactly what your view is going to be to whatever event you're going to, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. It takes literally just seconds to buy them. It's so easy. 2 taps and you're set, and tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. You get to take the guessing work out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, all you have to do is create an account on the Locked On or on the Game Time app, and then redeem code Locked On NFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So we got the news. I mean, I thought it was obvious, but the media really went running with this competition. Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields. It was always going to be Russell Wilson starting for the Steelers offense to start the season at least, right? But Russell Wilson was a startable fantasy asset last year, right? Like, he was a streamer when he had good matchups. You were able to play him. He was quarterback 15 in points per game last year. He scored more points per game than Jared Goff did last season, which is crazy. And very close to what Patrick Mahomes scored per game. It's because he still had the rushing upside. He had 341 rushing yards in 15 games. Do you think Russell Wilson's a guy we're going to be streaming this year?
Yeah, I think it's going to come up. And what's interesting is still, it's not just media, but like fantasy managers, like they're still into
They really
Justin
wanted
Fields.
Fields, yeah.
They want Justin Fields, and they're still drafting him. Like, he's still on the board right after Russell Wilson. And I get in deeper leagues, you might take a shot, but he was never going to be the starter. This is always so confusing when a coach has said, basically from the get-go, Russell Wilson's starter. So he had to say it again just to tell the reporters, hey, this was actually the case that I've already told you about. So I look at Russell Wilson. Yeah, he's going to have a chance to make starts. Now, let's look at the schedule. Immediately, we have one of the best weird revenge games on the slate in week 1, where the Steelers and Arthur Smith return to Atlanta. Now, the problem is the Falcons don't have the same defense, so he's not going to have any insight there. But Arthur Smith is going to want to beat the Falcons and roll out something. Now, do I trust Russell Wilson completely in that matchup? Keep in mind, Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons are part of this Falcons D, and Raheem Morris is there. But in another situation, yeah, I might look at Russell Wilson, but I think I want to take a wait-and-see approach for the Steelers offense a little bit, right? I want to see how it plays out with Smith. There's just so much new here, and we don't have – let's hope you don't have to play Russell Wilson. You might have to play him in a super flex or 2 QB league, but in a 1 QB league, you don't have to go there, right? There's other even better streaming options. But just wait and see what happens. Let's see what the Steelers offense looks like. We expect them to use more 12 personnel, be run heavy. So those are the 2 things that you have to worry about. So maybe you don't want the Steelers in too easy of a matchup where they can run the ball and play some defense, which I think they can do in week 1, because then you have a chance with Russell Wilson. It has to be like the let's say a game against the Chiefs or a team like that has some offense, Bengals in their own division or Ravens, really. Any of those teams would be good. But this matchup, let's say another matchup that's not very good, like the Chargers, right? That's not the best shootout scenario. So look to see if that could be a shootout place for Russ Wilson before you can play him. And wait and see. Let's see what this passing game looks like with George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, and the like.
Yeah, I definitely don't think we're going to wait and see the Russell Wilson before you ever consider putting him into your lineups unless you play in a 2-quarterback league. Then that's different. I do think this is nice for Najee Harris because with Justin Fields, he would have been stealing a lot of carries, right? He would have been
Yep.
stealing the goal line work. Russ won't be stealing that short yardage carries or goal line work. Like, I think this is good for Najee. Also, I think defense is going to be more scared of the passing game with Russell back there than Justin Fields would be. And for Pickens, I love Russell Wilson and George Pickens as a combo. They're perfect for each other. What Russell Wilson loves to do, throw deep. He's not afraid to throw into tight windows. He actually leads the NFL in passing touchdowns and air yards per attempt and tight window throws since 2018. And George Pickens is amazing at tight window target, like coming down with those tight window targets. So I love this for George Pickens and Najee Harris. Now, Bo Nix is starting for the Broncos, and there's been people who are getting excited about that. I've been seeing him go late, even in fantasy drafts. I would not consider starting him whatsoever in fantasy this year. But is that something you're interested in? Like, it's going to be a lot of short passes, just over and over and over.
Yeah, short passes. I mean, this is why he's been efficient, looked great in the preseason. There's a lot of efficiency there. Now, it's interesting what they did and moved on from Tim Patrick. So his primary playmakers are going to be Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims Jr. Now, that's how I look at this, right? They have a competent quarterback. Again, we thought Russell Wilson was going to be that, and that didn't work out right in Denver. But you look at Bo Nix, I think he's going to feed these guys quite a bit. Marvin Mims did score on his first touchdown pass in the preseason. Nix found him, but Sutton was getting targeted all over the place. So I also think, look, we'll see about tight end. They just moved on from P. Ryan as a pass catcher out of the backfield. I'm sure Javonte Williams and Julio McLaughlin will cut into that a little bit with the shorter passes you mentioned. But when you look at it, Greg Dulcich, jury's still out on him. We're not sure about extra depth on this Broncos team at receiver with Jerry Jeudy gone. So there could be some nice games here from Sutton and Mims. So let's watch it carefully. And again, they're going to get targeted a lot. So I think this is great news for those guys to be a little bit more than wide receiver 4s and 5s, to maybe have some back-end wide receiver 3 appeal. But Bo Nix, standalone value, unless, again, 2 QB league, super flex, where you need maybe a guy when you're one of your top 2 QBs is off, then yeah, Bo Nix could be a consideration, but I'm not going to force him in there. And really, what we know in a 2 QB superflex, he has to be one of the top 28 quarterbacks, 28 or 26, 24, right? If you're going to look at that player. So I don't know, in a 2 QB league 12 team, is he one of the top 24 QBs? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't even think so either. He's going to have a Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud type rookie season to be useful in fantasy at all. I will say with Cortland Sutton, I think those two, like I just brought up George Pickens and Russell Wilson, how they're the perfect match together. I think Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton couldn't be worse together, honestly. Bo Nix averaged 6.2 air yards per attempt in the preseason. 19 of his 23 completions were fewer than 10 air yards. Sutton is not a guy that's going to get you yards after the catch. He's one of the worst at yards after the catch. He's one of the worst separators. And that was a big thing about Bo Nix coming out of school, is he doesn't take chances, right? He's not going to turn over the ball. So he's not going to throw it to Sutton like Russell Wilson did and have Sutton come down with these insane plays like he did last year. So I'm out on Sutton. Marvin Mims at least has the skill set to be good in this type of offense because he could be really good after the catch. So maybe I take a chance on him. Just probably going to be a pretty gross offense together. Another gross offense, though, is the Patriots. And Jacoby Brissett being named the starter. I know Brissett looked fine with the Browns, but he's looked so bad this preseason.
Yeah, it's just not a very good situation. I mean, they're trying to figure out the offensive line. The receiving core has been a mess. They said goodbye to Juju Smith-Schuster. And I thought I would hold on to him, right? He's a veteran who's a big slot. Like, they were very quick to get rid of him. And we talked about Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, the rookies, potentially having a role. Then Hunter Henry, is he going to be consistent enough? I mean, he's not going anywhere in drafts as a tight end, even with the situation looking okay, right, to throw to the tight end. So it's just an ugly situation now. I'm trying to figure out what this means for Ramondre Stevenson. I think I've seen him drop in drafts as a deep RB2, even as an RB3. Now, the only hope here is that Stevenson catches a lot of garbage short balls, right? Jacoby Brissett's in trouble behind the offensive line. He's not the biggest runner. Dumps it off to Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe he can get 60 catches, something like that. But they're not going to score a lot. So Ramondre Stevenson's not going to be near the goal line. So I think Stevenson, I think you have to bump him down a little bit. And we'll see. Drake May will play at some point. But, man, this talk about a wait and see. I don't know what you're going to get at all from this Patriots offense. And really, the first matchup is tough. Lou Anarumo and the Bengals, I mean, it could be a very bad tone set for the season with this Patriots offense.
Yeah, this offense averaged 13.7 points per game last year, like as a team. And I know a lot of things have changed, but I don't know if they've changed for the better at this moment. So I'm pretty much just staying away from this offense. I'm excited about what Jalen Polk can be in his career, but I don't know how long that's going to take. He's still going with the wide receiver twos for whatever reason. Like, they are just scared to like put their best players out there because Drake May showed more potential than what Jacoby Brissett did this preseason. That's for sure. With Ramondre Stevenson, if I'm in a full PPR league, I'm okay with taking him, but half or standard, like you said, there's just not going to be the scoring opportunity. This offense is looking atrocious. Just want to stay away. Like, I just don't know if there's any upside here to be had. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every day. We're going to be back tomorrow, Friday, to finish up the week. And then after this, we get into week 1 of the fantasy season. Absolutely insane. I'm so excited for this. We'll get into our daily, typical rundown for the fantasy week starting on Monday. Enjoy your night, everybody. Bye.